The only thing that surprises me about the latest Miss USA news that's the talk of the town is that y'all are surprised. That's the one thing that shocks me. How are you all still so surprised by what's happening in the organization? Have I not made all of these episodes for you? Have I not made all of these episodes for you? Have I not rung the alarm? I feel like Paul Revere shouting that the British are coming. Except nobody's listening. If you haven't already heard, people are questioning the eligibility of the new Miss Alaska USA. So let's talk about it. I have not done a state hopping episode in a while, and I would say I have some experience on this because I represented a state that I was not born and raised in at Miss USA. So of course, I'm gonna have a different perspective. But I wanna share with you a couple of useful pieces of information in this matter. The first thing that I think is so important is that pageant rules are arbitrary. They change throughout the decades, and that includes eligibility rules. These rules are created and they're put in place by the organization for a number of different reasons that usually is because it's going to be something that best serves the organization. There's always a reason behind every single one of these little rules, and throughout the years, the contracts have gotten longer and longer and longer. With that being said, I understand that there are many times where a contestant is new to a state or was not born and raised in that state or that region. They win the title, and the locals that are born and raised from that area get really upset about that contestant's win. Of course, it's your right to be upset and to dislike or disagree with any judge's decision. But so long as a contestant is meeting eligibility rules, she won that title fair and square. The issue of state hopping or country hopping is very different from alleging that a pageant was rigged. Two totally different topics. The simple fact when it comes to state hopping or country hopping is that you are not entitled to your state or your country's title because you were born and raised in that state or country. And I know that's going to be very difficult for a lot of people to hear, but that is a fact. The reason that a lot of people get very upset about a pageant results is because they've built up an entitlement for that title just because they were born and raised in that region. And that is not what judges are looking for. That is not how judges are qualifying title holders and choosing winners. They are selecting the contestant that they think did the best job at the pageant, the contestant that they think may have that best chance moving forward to the next level, or maybe the best representative for the state or the country that particular year. So that is what I have to say about that. But the reason why this residency eligibility is creating a stir and causing a conversation is because it appears that the residency rules for Miss USA have now been changed since 2023, and no one was made aware of this. We know that state hopping and country hopping is not new, but that's not actually the center of this conversation. The center of the conversation is that apparently the residency rules for Miss USA have been changed, and allegedly they were changed in 2023, but I didn't see a press statement. I didn't see any disclosure on the websites, and it looks like the 2025 state title holder contract does not reflect these new rules of eligibility. So let me set the stage for you. The new Miss Alaska USA was born and lived her young life in Alaska. Then she moved, as many people do. Then she competed this season at Miss Tennessee USA. Shortly after, she didn't win, so she competed back in Alaska, her home state. She submitted her paperwork just like everybody else, and she was accepted as a contestant by the new director, Troy. Other thing to note, Troy is a new director that has been appointed by Layla Rose. So Troy has not been around before, but clearly he is Layla approved. The rules over the years have changed. So when I started competing in the USA system, the rules were that you have had to have lived in that state for at least 6 months. Then that number went down to only 90 days. Then the rule changed again, and you were actually allowed to compete in 2 states within the same year, but you were supposed to allow 90 days of space between those 2 entries. Now it appears that those rules are completely out the door, and all residency requirements now are up to the discretion of the state director. I feel like that is a really important change that should have been announced on the website and in a press release. Because if this is happening right now, why didn't we all know about this? I don't care if you change your rules for a pageant, but everybody needs to be aware of these rules so we know who's eligible and who's not. But if there is no more eligibility rules based off of how long that you have lived in a state, that means you can literally live anywhere in the United States and compete for any state pageant that you want to compete for. Those are the implications here. When people took to social media and started asking how the new Miss Alaska USA was eligible to even compete in Alaska USA when she had just competed in Tennessee, this is what the director responded by saying. To our incredible Miss Alaska USA community, I want to take a moment to address some questions that have come up regarding the eligibility of one of this year's contestants. First and foremost, let me be clear. Kelsey Kraft is an Alaskan. Her roots, her story, and her connection to the state are authentic and deeply personal. In 2023, the Miss USA organization implemented a nationwide policy allowing the 90-day residency requirements to be waived. This policy applies to every state, not just Alaska, and gives each state director the discretion to accept contestants with strong ties to the state, regardless of current residency. Kelsey Kraft is an Alaskan and had every right to compete for the title of Miss Alaska USA, both under the guidelines of our state and with the full support of the national organization. We are incredibly proud of Kelsey. She is a poised, passionate, and powerful representative who we all know will make Alaska proud on the Miss USA stage. If anyone has additional questions or concerns, you are more than welcome to reach out directly to the Miss USA National Office for further clarification. With gratitude, Troy Michael Smith. Troy is standing by the decision to say that his new title holder is eligible to compete in Alaska and has won fair and square. Let me just say also, I have no dog in this fight, so I wasn't even paying attention to who won and who's eligible and who's not. I have no interest in that, but I do think it is worth talking about if residency requirements have changed. So because of this conversation, then people brought up the fact that the new Miss Nevada USA was just first runner-up at Miss Texas USA. Then Shayna Moakler, her director, chimed in on the USB boards to share her thoughts about this. It might also be worth noting that Shayna directs Nevada and Utah, and both of those states, since she's been the director, have crowned multiple state hoppers. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all because, like I said, I represented Montana and I grew up in California. So here's what Shayna had to say about this. Someone asked who won Miss Nevada USA, and then a reply was, can't wait to see how many community outreach events she does in Nevada. Shayna Moakler said she's already done more in 1 week than my last title holder who was born and raised in Nevada. Each girl is different and I let them decide if they want to do appearances or not, and some have school or real jobs. Somebody else asked, did Mary have dual residency in Texas and Nevada for a few months at least? I only ask because she would have had to have established Nevada residency by sometime in March, as she just posted on her own Instagram in June that she would be competing for Miss Nevada USA. But Miss Texas USA that she was just first runner-up in was just in May. I guess I'm just confused, but I know Shayna is an amazing director and Mary will be a strong competitor at nationals. Shayna responded, at this point, girls are securing residency in dual states long before the 3 months, not just in mine, but in numerous. So now there's these conversations about residency. In my opinion, what's done is done, and USA really does not take back crowning a title holder unless something absolutely terrible has happened. In my opinion, it's not the fault, if that's even the right word, of the contestants that decided to compete in another state. If there's any blame to be put on anybody, which I don't even think that that really applies here, if there's any blame, it would be coming from the national office or the state offices that are not doing their due diligence with contestant eligibility. But it sounds like that they were, and these things are allowed. So if they are allowed, then really you can't say anything about it. But here's also what I find very, very interesting, and that are the 2025 state contracts that people are referencing. I acknowledge that prior to the date of the state pageant, I did not compete in another state's pageant preliminary to the 2025 Miss USA pageant for a period of at least 90 consecutive days before the date of the state pageant, unless I qualified to compete in another state's pageant pursuant to paragraph 1E2 above. I further understand and agree that I may not compete in more than 2 state pageants preliminary to the 2025 Miss USA pageant. It goes on to say that they satisfy these requirements. I now reside and have resided in my state as my permanent and primary residence as defined below for a period of at least 90 consecutive days immediately prior to the date of the state pageant. Permanent and primary residence, or permanent and primary residence, means my true, fixed, and permanent domicile, which I intend to make my permanent home. In order to establish my compliance with these residency requirements, I am attaching photocopies of at least 3 of the following types of bona fide documents, at least one of which must be a document of type A through E. Then they list all the documents. A lot of people are saying that the new eligibility requirements clearly are not reflected in these 2025 contracts. But my bigger question is, are these contracts even valid? Because we still do not have state directors for all of the states. And some of the states do have directors, but those directors have not planned a state pageant because they have not received the franchise contract from Layla. If existing directors haven't received the contract from Layla, how have these new directors received the contract, if at all, if they did? And furthermore, how do they have these 2025 state contracts that aren't even reflective of these alleged new residency rules that are said to have been imposed in 2023? If the rules actually changed in 2023, why do the contracts not reflect that? That's the question I have. I would love answers. I think it's incredible. I think that one day there will probably be a documentary on Netflix about this. Honestly, there are just so many crazy things happening and so many unanswered questions. But that's the news that I had to catch up on. I just thought I would share this because to me it's so interesting. And people are talking about these 2025 contracts, but I'm wondering, are they even valid? Are they valid if the state directors haven't even gotten their franchise contracts? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, friends. And also let me know what you want to see on the next episode.